Welcome to the Full Strength Father podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Corper, and founder of Full Strength Father. I'm excited to dive into episode 7 of this podcast today. We're going to talk about the fifth element of the code, which is highly focused. I've covered the other elements of this code in previous episodes and the origin of Full Strength Father and this code in episodes 1 through 3. So check out those other episodes if you'd like more insight into the other elements of the code. Highly focused. This is what it reads. Quote, I will develop and utilize the ability to focus. I will take care of my physical and digital surroundings. I will keep them in order. I will create environments, routines, and habits that reduce distractions and enhance productivity. I will be engaged. I will be present. I understand that my success as a father is directly connected to my ability to be present and intentional through each moment of the day. Focus generally refers to the act of paying attention or directing our attention towards a particular object, an idea, a task, a goal, while ignoring or minimizing the distractions that keep us from that. It involves concentrating on a specific thing or an activity and putting aside all other competitive stimuli. Focus is an absolutely critical aspect of fatherhood because it directly connects to our productivity, directly connects to our effective communication with our spouse or significant other and our children, and it's directly connected to achieving success in our role as fathers. It can be developed and it can be improved, which is the good news. It's a skill set. We have to practice focus. We can use various techniques, and I want to talk about a few that I've found impactful in my own life. So here's some things that you and I can both do to enhance our ability to focus. And I'll go through 10 things that can be meaningful when it comes to developing this skill, this essential skill. First is to create a distraction-free environment. Eliminate or reduce distractions, noise, social media, electronic devices, clutter, those kind of things. Yesterday, I spent about an hour and a half organizing my office. I had been just hammering and working really hard and going nonstop, and I had let clutter sort of overtake the space. Books weren't organized, papers, around, a little bit dusty here and there. And it was just, I was working really hard, but I kind of let my environment go. And as a result, when I stepped into my office, I didn't necessarily feel like it was conducive to focus. Yes, I was getting work done, but the environment was sort of starting to weigh on me. So what I did was I took everything out, vacuumed, dusted, threw away all the excess stuff, organized, changed some lighting, and organized all my books. You can actually see them behind me if you're watching this podcast. And I'll tell you what, immediately when I step in here now, I feel like it's time to work, it's time to focus, and it's supportive of my goals. Now, you may or may not be in that situation, depending on what you do for work, but think about the effect of your environment on your ability to be present and focus. If we're living in chaos, it's very hard to have a calm, peaceful mind. And so that's one thing that when it comes to making changes, I've noticed is that it's easiest to just change the environment. It's a lot harder to change internal things, I think, because they're less tangible. But the environments that we have can support those internal changes and certainly make them easier and more fluid, more effective. Second, prioritize tasks. Talked a little bit about this in the episode on Man of Action. And there's some great insight there. But we need to determine which tasks are most important and complete them first. And this helps us, prevent procrastination, and it also reduces stress. It takes a little bit of work because we actually have to think through what we're doing and identify which are priorities. But the cool thing is as we practice that ability of task prioritization, it can actually become kind of automatic, where we start to act in a way on a day-to-day basis automatically where we're prioritizing things. But even if you are there, it's still super valuable to make sure that that's happening, whether you do it digitally or physically on a whiteboard, whatever it might be. Third, break down those larger tasks into smaller ones. So this helps make the larger task more manageable and less overwhelming. And it leads into the fourth suggestion, which is to use the Pomodoro technique, which I mentioned in a previous episode, where essentially what you do is you set a timer for a dedicated, super focused session where you're accomplishing one task or maybe two, and then you take a dedicated break and then you go back to it. So you've created this interval of deep focus and then a break, deep focus and then a break. For me, this is really helpful because what I tend to do is I'll work for a really long time, but what starts to happen as I get fatigued, fatigued from being so focused on something, is that I'll become more liable to go to my phone or just be a little bit more distracted. And so when I shorten the time that I'm focusing and then I really, really go hard in that focus, it allows me to get more done in that time. And so instead of spending 4 hours and getting 60% done of what I need to do, I might be spending 3 or 2.5 and getting everything done. So that's a great technique. I have an app on my computer that I use for that, but you can also just use your stopwatch. Regular exercise can really help with our cognitive abilities, our ability to focus. And physiologically, there's so many benefits to regular exercise and movement. So, of course, this will reduce stress and improve focus and our abilities in that area. Another suggestion, number 7, that I have is to avoid multitasking. And this is where we just focus on that one task that we're doing. So you might find that, you fall into that just naturally. But I can promise that if you're able to identify one thing and stick with it for a dedicated amount of time, that you'll be much more productive if you avoid multitasking. 8th is get enough sleep. Lack of sleep can reduce your ability to focus and has a dramatic effect on your cognitive abilities. I talk about this in the Full Strength Father Field Manual. A book that I'd recommend for those listening is Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. That book can be a manual for you as to how you can improve your sleep, but it also gives you the why behind why you'd want to do that. And it would connect to this subject really well. I know that the days that I do get restorative sleep, I'm so much sharper. So the 9th suggestion is to take regular breaks. Again, this ties back to the 4th suggestion, the Pomodoro technique. But these breaks, it's important to note that they can be used to rejuvenate and refresh. But if we go in those breaks to distraction, then it's much harder to get back into that focused state. So use those breaks, be intentional, unplug, move, breathe, do some things that'll help you go back into that focused state without skipping a beat. And then another thing, the 10th suggestion would be to be positive with your mindset and your self-talk. So encouraging yourself and having a can-do attitude, a bring it on type of attitude when it comes to the tasks that you're doing can be massive. So those are 10 suggestions as to how, some really practical techniques as to how you and I can focus as fathers. Now, why would it be important to implement those things and to be highly focused as a father? There's a few things that I can think of. First is that it allows us to be fully present with our families. When we're able to focus and we've developed that ability, we can give our spouses and our children undivided attention, which as a father in this modern world, I feel like that's one of the most challenging things that we have to overcome, and also one of the most important skill sets that we have to develop. When we are giving our children undivided attention, that means that we are not looking at our phone, we're not watching TV, we're engaged with them, we're asking them questions, and we're leading them, and we're connecting with them. It'll allow us to listen and to be able to coach and teach through listening. And as a result, our children and our spouses will trust us more, and we'll be able to more fully magnify our purpose as fathers. So that's the first, is it allows us to be fully present. If we're developing this skill in our career, in our work life, the awesome thing is that it does translate into, or it should translate into, our family life. If we're focusing on both, being focused, highly focused in our career, highly focused with our family, then that's really where it gets dynamic. So another way that implementing these techniques and strategies or working on this skill of being highly focused can help us as fathers is it simultaneously, along with us being present with our families, allows us to be an effective role model for them. One thing that I've learned having two young sons, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, is they're watching what I'm doing. And it's so powerful to think that our children, we are everything to them. They want nothing more than to be close with us and to have a wonderful relationship with us. We are the ones that, through our own negligence or lack of focus and intent, can damage that desire that they have. And so the point is that if we are highly focused and present, our children are going to learn that that's how you interact with people. They will learn that through our example, just naturally, that we don't have our phones when we're engaging in conversation. We're not distracted. We're present. We're making eye contact. We're communicating. We're listening. And those traits can be transferred to our children. I've realized that my sons are oftentimes a mirror of me. And so if they're behaving a certain way, granted, we have all the things that are associated with young children and what they're developing, they're learning in all those different stages. But if I'm calm and if I'm focused and I'm present with them, the likelihood of them developing those traits is much greater than if I'm not, if I'm distracted, if I'm emotional and ill-tempered and those kind of things. So another element of how focus affects fatherhood is it allows us to accomplish tasks. So when we're, as fathers, there's so many responsibilities that we have, but being able to focus can help us knock out tasks efficiently and effectively and spend time on the things that matter most, quality time with our families and creating experiences and giving back and serving. So it's very important. Another key thing that having this ability or developing this ability to focus can help us with is managing stress. If we are lacking focus in our life, we can feel like the walls are starting to close in. And that's where I was just a few months ago. In the podcasts, episodes 1 through 3, I talk about it in detail. But because I wasn't mapping out my days, planning and focusing and accomplishing meaningful tasks, I felt like I wasn't getting anything done. I felt like I was struggling to make progress in my life. And that compounded with negative thinking and led me to a place where I was not doing well at all, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So realize that being highly focused on goals and being intentional, being present, will help you feel more confident. And it will help you feel more confident in your role as a leader, as a man. The final element that focus can really help us in, and I'm sure there are many more, but it just helps us make better decisions. As fathers, there are so many decisions that we have to make on a daily basis, decisions that really affect our families, big and small. And so when we're able to focus, we can more accurately make correct decisions and adjust than if we're in a fog and we're not focused. So I'm going to get in now to the self-evaluation from this code. So we've identified how important it is to be focused as fathers. I've shared some techniques that we can use to enhance our focus. This self-eval allows us to grade ourselves with how focused we are. And that grading gives us a tangible metric that we can use to make specific improvements. Because it's all great to say, well, okay, great, I live by this code. This is what I'm working to be. But without data, without some sort of tracking mechanisms, it's really hard to quantify what we're doing. And so the underlying inspiration for this code for me was reading the book, The Code, The Evaluation, The Protocols by Jocko Willink, among other systems that I've used in the past. Coming from a strength and conditioning background, I know that any great program has to have key principles attached to it. And one of those is that you're measuring progress. So if we want to increase human performance in a certain area, say speed, if we never get baseline times with an athlete, then we're really shooting in the dark. If we never do an assessment, we're shooting in the dark. So that's why this self-evaluation is so important, because what I've realized as I've started using it, and I'll eventually open this up and launch this as a resource for other fathers, and I think it'll become a core element of our community and discussions and growth. But I've realized that as I'm doing this self-eval, I'm just sort of automatically starting to recognize where my weaknesses are, where the gaps are, and then I'm able to more quickly change and improve. So it's been really valuable for me. So there's a grade 0, 1, 2 through 4, and 5. 0 being the poorest grade, and then a 5 being the highest grade. So I'll read these for you. Now, as I read these, think about where you fall in this spectrum of grades, and go through an exercise yourself, and I'll grade myself as well as I read this, and you can already start to experience how this can benefit you. Okay, grade 0 for highly focused. Completely unfocused. Physical and digital surroundings became less organized. Spent a high amount of time on screens or engaging in other distractions. Felt a lack of progression overall. High level of distraction dramatically affected my family relationships. Grade 1, somewhat focused throughout the day. Lacked self-discipline and environment, routine, and habits. Followed through on some, but not all action items, lacking intent. Physical and digital surroundings detracted from my ability to focus. Quality time with family was minimally impactful. So as I read those two grades, I realized that's where I was living when I was really, really struggling. I was living in a 0 and 1, just back and forth. I'd be somewhat focused, lacking some discipline. My environments weren't clean, weren't organized. I was just sort of getting by. I was getting some things done, but, I was having some quality time, but it was minimally impactful. Just drifting. 2 through 4 is where I shifted. When I shifted out of that place and took control of my life, I started to live in this 2 to 4 range. And I had a few 5s. Before I read these, one of the insights that I've had as I've done this is that I realized that 5 is almost unattainable. It's what we're striving for. But if we're living in a 2 to 4 range, the likelihood that we hit that 5 is much greater than if we're living in a 0 to 1. So 2 through 4 reads, was highly focused throughout the day, accomplished meaningful tasks, followed through on my schedule, my action items, because of my high focus level, maintained a high standard of organization and cleanliness in my physical and digital environments, avoided distractions and time wasting, was highly focused and engaged with my family. So that's a great day. Now, if we're living in that 2 to 4 range, we're going to be very, very focused, and we're going to be able to lead our families and ourselves. Grade 5, achieved a new breakthrough in my ability to focus. Wasted no time and devoted focused energy only to the most critical and impactful priorities. Sought out opportunities to focus beyond my previous limits. Achieved a breakthrough in family relationships, friends, etc., because of highly focused and intentional state. So where did you grade as you heard those different ranges or descriptions? Today, I'm hoping, as I'm recording this podcast in the morning, that my day can definitely grade in a 2 through 4. And so far, it seems like I'm on track for that. And it's a reminder to me that that's what I'm striving for. I really want to live in that 2 through 4, and then hopefully get a 5 occasionally. So were you a 0 or a 1, maybe a 2 through 4, or did you grade a 5? Imagine now that you had a chart where each evening you went through each element of the code: physically prepared, mentally sharp, spiritually disciplined, man of action, and highly focused. And you just took a second, you read those descriptions, then you wrote down a 1 or a 4 or a 0 or a 5. So you could see for Monday what your grades were in those 5 areas. And then Tuesday evening, you do the same thing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then maybe Sunday night you sit down and you add up all of the grades for the week and get an average. Well, let's say that my average for physically prepared is a 1. Okay, I can read that description, look back at my week, and I now have a description for what my week looked like for that element of the code. And then you can extrapolate that over the weeks and months and realize that you have this continuum of insight into how you are doing in these key areas. And the whole design of this code is to be a reference point for us, and to, by living the code, to more fully live our purpose, which I've defined in this document, the Full Strength Father purpose, as lead with integrity, provide with consistency, and protect at all costs. So the code is the program or the system that helps us live those 3 things, our purpose as fathers. And I know that this is in development right now, and I'm currently utilizing it myself as a framework. But I have this feeling inside that I just know that if it's helping me as a father with what I value and what I'm looking forward to accomplishing, and my hopes and my dreams and my visions, that it is going to help other men. And I'm really, really excited to develop this and have it be a constant pursuit to create this system and this structure that we as fathers can utilize no matter where we live, no matter how much money we make, no matter what our circumstances are. If you're a father and you care about your children and your role and your spouse, your significant other, and you want more for them, that this can be a framework that'll guide you and give you insight for the rest of your life. And that around this framework, we can build these resources when it comes to the physical side of things, fitness, nutrition, recovery. We can build resources that'll help with the mental side of things, spiritual, action, career, success, focus. There are so many talented, experienced men in all of these areas. And one of the things that I'm starting to feel in this podcast as I share this and as this movement starts to grow is that with this message and this framework, we'll be able to unite those men that have unique gifts and talents in these different areas to create this resource, to create this community for fathers. So I'm really, really excited about that. And this is just the start. So it's my commitment to you that I will continue to publish, share my thoughts going forward. And I know that consistency is it's gonna add value for you, for me, and that it'll open the door to that greater vision that I'm talking about. So I appreciate your time hanging out with me today on the podcast. Until we meet again on this podcast, I wish you the best. And until then, remember, live full strength or die.